The Way of the Sword, The Legend of Satsuma. The Last Warrior of Satsuma. In a war-torn Japan, where warriors' honor and fate were decided by the sword, the province of Satsuma still stood proudly. For centuries, the Satsuma samurai dominated the battlefields, but now, as the world modernized, the once invincible clan was on the brink of oblivion. Takahiro, the last warrior of Satsuma, watched the sunrise in an open field, where the land, scarred by countless battles, seemed to breathe with the memories of his ancestors. His hands were firm on his sword, the legacy of his clan, and his soul burned with a silent fury. He knew that the honor of his lineage was in his hands, and if he failed, the memory of Satsuma would be erased forever. "My name will be the last one remembered," Takahiro whispered to himself, as the wind made the leaves on the trees dance. "But my clan will live on." He was a man marked by destiny. He knew his mission was not only to save his people, but to restore the honor of his clan, which had been torn apart by betrayal and death. In a divided Japan, where the empire was crumbling into pieces, the quest for power had corrupted those who had once sworn to protect the country. Takahiro embarked on a solitary journey to the capital, where the winds of revolution were beginning to blow stronger. He knew the empire had fallen, and the new rulers saw the samurai as relics of a distant past. But he would not bow to this new era. His sword would be the last stand against the decadence gripping Japan. The Island of Exile. But Takahiro's path was far from easy. The crossing to the capital took him past a desolate island, where exile had been the punishment for those who defied the established order. The island, surrounded by turbulent waters, was where fallen warriors were left to die. Among the exiled prisoners was Katsu, a samurai who had been condemned for an irreparable error. Katsu had been the captain of an elite battalion, but a failure on an important mission led to his shame and expulsion. His honor was tarnished, and he was sent to the island, where the fate of many warriors was a slow death, a life of regret. But Katsu, in his solitude, swore to himself that he would restore his honor, and that the last thing he would do before dying would be to fight to the end. "My spirit will not be broken by this place," he muttered to himself, staring into the distance. "I will fight to restore my honor, even if it means defying fate itself." One dark night, when the winds were fierce and the sky was covered in heavy clouds, Katsu heard the echoes of an approaching storm. He knew he was being watched and that his escape would be his only chance for redemption. With his hands firmly on his sword, Katsu broke the chains that bound him and fled into the darkness. The island, with its sharp rocks and shadowy trees, would be no obstacle. He knew the real battle lay beyond exile, and that his journey to restore his honor would begin there, in the darkness of night. The Broken Code. As Takahiro advanced toward the capital, another samurai, Kazuki, was gripped by a soul-shattering dilemma. Kazuki had been a tireless defender of the samurai code, Bushidō, which governed the lives of warriors. But times were changing, and he began to question whether the code still had a place in modern Japan. Kazuki watched his family being destroyed by those who used politics to gain power. Having always believed in justice and loyalty, Kazuki found himself forced to make difficult choices. When his clan was defeated in battle, he knew that to survive, he would have to give up some of his most deeply held beliefs. "Is this really the way?" Kazuki wondered, surveying the blood-stained battlefields. "Does true honor lie in following the old traditions, or in doing what is necessary to survive?" The samurai code was betraying him. He had broken his promise to himself and his clan, but now he knew his fight was no longer for the sword, but for true justice. As Takahiro advanced toward his final battle, Kazuki prepared to face the very ghosts that had consumed him. He didn't know if he could restore his honor, but one thing was certain: the Japan he knew was dying, and he could no longer ignore the truth. The last fight. The battlefield lay before them. Takahiro, Katsu, and Kazuki were finally reunited, each with their own destiny in mind, each with their own internal battles. The icy wind bit their skin, and the warriors prepared for what could be their last fight. Takahiro, his sword imposing, advanced with the strength of a lion. He knew that to save Satsuma, He would have to defeat the generals who commanded the new empire. But he was not alone. Beside him, Katsu, who had escaped from prison, faced his own demons. He would fight for his redemption. And Kazuki, the samurai who had broken the code, now faced a battle that was not only physical, but also moral. Together they faced an army of ruthless soldiers, but what drove them wasn't just the desire for victory. It was the spirit of a lost Japan, where honor wasn't about a blade, but the courage to fight to the end, even when the odds were against you. The battle was fierce. Takahiro cut through his enemies with masterful precision. Katsu displayed his indomitable strength, and Kazuki, though wounded, fought with renewed fervor. Victory was within reach, but the price would be high. The legacy of the samurai. In the end, the battlefield fell silent. Takahiro looked to the horizon, where the sun was beginning to rise, illuminating the blood-stained land. The Japan he knew had changed forever, but his honor and the honor of his friends would remain. "This is the true legacy of the samurai," Takahiro said, his voice thick with sadness and wisdom. "It is not victories that define a man, but his ability to fight to the end." And so, the story of Takahiro, Katsu, and Kazuki was told for generations. Feudal Japan was dying, but the spirits of the warriors, their stories of honor and sacrifice, would never be forgotten.